Delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS. We've all had it. We know what it is, that painful feeling that we experience the next day after a training session, or it's even worse, often 2 days later. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, that's up for debate, and I'm going to discuss that in a second. But before I discuss that, what actually causes muscle growth? If I said to you, through weight training, we tear the muscles and then the muscles grow back bigger, that would sound familiar, wouldn't it? However, that's not the case. And it was often thought that the muscles get torn during training, and it's that tearing process and that growing back process which would then build the muscles and they would grow bigger. Well, I'm not denying that muscles do get torn, little micro tears during a training session. That isn't the thing that causes muscle growth. And that might be a surprise to you, because that is often talked about. Oh, you've got to tear the muscles to build them back. But it happens at the same time, but it's not necessarily a cause. And the reason why that is important is because DOMS is thought that it's caused by those micro tears. So therefore, if those micro tears aren't part of building muscle, they're just kind of a byproduct of something that happens at the same time, that would mean DOMS aren't needed to build muscle. I'm not going to go into the details of how muscle is built in the body. One, because I probably couldn't explain it well enough. And two, that's not the point of this video. But I just needed to get that point across, that micro tears are not needed to build muscle. So taking that into account, that we don't necessarily need those micro tears, do we need DOMS? No is the answer. So all DOMS is a sign that you've worked a particular muscle and it's trying to recover. It's trying to repair itself because there's been a certain amount of damage to that tissue. Let's look at why DOMS could be good, and let's look at why DOMS could be a bad thing. DOMS could be good because if you've got DOMS, say I've got DOMS in my bicep, any excuse for a flex, then I know that I have worked that muscle really hard. So I've probably worked it to the level that I need to work it to provide the stimulus to build more muscle. It's a useful indicator to show that you've worked a muscle hard enough. So physically, that is useful to us, but also mentally as well. If I go into the gym and the next day I'm feeling sore, whether it's an indicator that I'm actually building muscle or not, mentally I'm like, I've had a good workout, I feel good, I feel better about myself even though I'm sore. Mentally it helps, and that might just be me, but that also might apply to you as well. Alternatively, on the other side, why DOMS might be bad is because if you work the muscles so hard that you're aching for days later, you can't then perform the next training session at the required level. You're missing out on the stimulus that you need to build muscle, build strength. So on that front, you're almost shooting yourself in the foot, aren't you? So you work that hard, you've got that bad DOMS that you can't perform the exercises at the required level. Can you actually do anything about reducing DOMS after a training session? Movement, getting the blood flow, helping recovery. Good nutrition, staying hydrated, all help. Stretching. Let's say you've had a really hard squat session and you've hit back squats, there's leg extensions, you've done some lunges as well. There's been so much impact in your quads. Do you think standing there and pulling your heel to your backside for 15 seconds is going to undo all the hard work, the stimulus that you put in, and potentially kind of breaking down those muscle tissues a little bit? Probably not. So when it comes to stretching, in my experience, in my opinion, stretching after a training session, and you might disagree, doesn't seem to make any difference to the after effects of DOMS. It's difficult to tell, to be honest, whether it does or not, because you don't know at that time what the DOMS are going to be like after the training session, because sometimes it's really painful and other times it's not as painful, and that largely depends on when you've trained previously that particular muscle, or your general energy levels, your recovery going into that training session. So it's difficult to tell, but generally things to help reduce the DOMS. Movement is the best one that I found. If your legs are aching, sitting down, doing nothing tends to make it worse. Getting up, moving around tends to release it. I remember this one, I'm going to leave you with this. Probably, was it 6 or 7 years ago, when we had the group training gym, somebody came into the gym, they were in bits. They could hamming it up a little bit, but they were hobbling through the door. I can remember she was really struggling to walk after the previous day. I'm like, right, come on, let's just get moving. And she was nearly in tears. I don't know why I'm laughing. It was funny, you had to be there. She was really struggling, but after the warm up, after a few movements, she was like, oh, it's not as bad. I'm like, no, because movement, once you get going, it helps it. Anyway, DOMS.